I-27 female, was 19 at the time, and I was hitchhiking for no damn reason other than wanting to do so. No, I was not traveling alone. I was traveling with a person. We'll call them RD for the sake of privacy. RD and I were somewhere outside of San Francisco, thumbing our way to Oregon, so I could meet up with my really good childhood friend. After some time, this guy pulls up in a big red truck, and we put our packs in the back of his truck and climbed in the cab. He asks us where we're going, and we just say as far north as you're willing to take us. So we're driving along, and after a short little while, he starts talking to me and how I look like I couldn't be any older than 14. I'm short, thin, and generally appear to be younger than I am. He also told me how I was super pretty. Naturally, as a female growing up where I did, I was used to all kinds of creepy comments like this and never noticed how bad it genuinely was at the time because it just seemed like normal BS. After a slew of compliments and suggestions of leaving RD and just going home with him, RD finally had enough. We were romantically involved at the time, and RD told him to just drop us off. This guy argued with RD, saying he was just joking and making friendly conversation, but RD was insistent on having him drop us off. I'm glad, to be honest. RD asked me to grab the stuff out of the bed of the truck once he pulled over. Bad idea. I get back there, hand him my stuff first, naturally, and I go to hand him his bag when suddenly this guy driving just starts to take off, with me still in the back of his truck. Terrified, I jumped out. Unfortunately, we ended up losing a guitar because I never got to grab it out of the bed of his truck. I look back at it now and had a lot of good memories out there hitchhiking. I did it for about 3 years, so I have loads of weird stories from it. But I still get so uncomfortable thinking about this one because I was so close to just being taken. From my own negligence, mostly. This happened about 5 years ago, so please be patient with me as I may not remember every detail or moment exactly correctly. That being said, this whole experience is burned pretty intensely in my mind, so I remember about 90% of it pretty well. I'm a 26-year-old man, making me about 21 when this event occurred. I live in southern Ohio, about 45 minutes away from Cincinnati. I went to a smaller college in the area, and I was pretty isolated from most of my friends and family during the week. My friends all went to their various choices of college throughout the Midwest, and my family remained in my hometown. I ended up at a school alone because I had a rather specific major, and this was one of the few colleges in the country that would accommodate me. Luckily, my girlfriend went to a college fairly close to me, so I would often find myself making 2 to 3 trips a week to see her and study with her. On most weekends, I would go on road trips to visit my friends, considering their campuses were a lot bigger and more fun than my small town college. During this particular weekend in question, I was getting ready to make about a 2-hour trip to see my friend Kyle at his school, the name of which I probably shouldn't disclose. I had made the same trip about 30 times before, so I knew the route pretty well at this point and didn't have to use GPS to get there. I left on Friday afternoon once I got done with classes for the day, and I was set to arrive at Kyle's dorm at around 8 p.m., right on time to go out for a night of binge drinking and eating garbage food, the joys of college. I set off around 5:50 and was roughly 15 minutes into my trip when my girlfriend called me. This was pretty unusual considering I had already told her I was driving to Kyle's, so I answered quickly, thinking something must have been wrong. Well, she was working that night and her car had broken down on her dorm room parking lot when she was leaving to go work her shift. She figured I wasn't too far into my trip and wanted to know if I could give her a quick ride to work before I got too far away. Me, being the dutiful boyfriend I was, agreed to come get her since I was only about 20 minutes from her location. I was already pretty far off campus, so I pulled over my car on the highway and used GPS to see if there was a faster route to her from where I was. The map on my phone revealed that there was an exit coming up that would take me to a side street that I could use to get her fairly quickly. So I texted her that I was on my way and set off towards my new destination. I had seen the exit in question plenty of times, but never had any reason to get off on it. So once I exited the highway, my surroundings were completely unfamiliar to me. This exit took me off onto a road that had dense woods on the right side and the highway on the left side. According to my phone, the next turn wasn't for about 5 miles, so I had a ways to go until I had to do any navigating. About a half mile later, the road had turned and there were now trees on either side of me. To be honest, it was a really beautiful sight. It was October, so the surrounding woods were a mixture of various warm colors, and I was actually really enjoying my little detour. The entire drive was wooded on either side, with only the occasional break in the tree line for a driveway and a mailbox to poke out. The houses were hard to see through the trees, but from the few glimpses I did manage to get, the houses were actually pretty nice. It was getting a little dark, and I had about a mile to go before I had to turn, when I noticed a Toyota with the hood popped open further down the road. As I approached, I noticed a man in a shirt and tie with his head under the roof, seemingly with a broken down car. There was no traffic to be seen behind me, so I stopped for a moment to ask him if everything was okay and if he needed to borrow my phone or anything. He didn't seem to hear me at first, so a little louder this time I said, "Everything okay?" This time he seemed to have heard me, and he lifted his head up away from the engine and looked up at me. He seemed like a completely normal guy, and he had a normal face to match. The best way I could describe him is just being pedestrian looking. He had short brown hair, brown eyes, and a 5 o'clock shadow. He smiled at me and said he was on his way home from work and that something had gone wrong with his engine. I offered him my phone in case he wanted to call anyone to get picked up or get the car towed. He replied, "Oh no, that's okay. I have a car service that will come get my car for me. They're closed until tomorrow morning though, so I hate to ask, but could you possibly give me a ride to my brother's house? He lives only like 4 minutes away from here." This absolutely should have been a red flag for me. I think I was a little stunned by how normal this guy seemed, considering most hitchhikers on TV are crazy or are axe murderers. Why wouldn't he have used my phone to call his brother? Why couldn't he have called his brother? I guess I wasn't thinking clearly at the time, but hindsight is 20/20, and I'm well aware I made a bad decision that night. I was physically much bigger than him, and he was driving a nice car, so I figured he wasn't a weirdo or local crazy person that I could overpower him if need be. So I agreed to give him a quick ride to his brother's house, since it was on the way to my girlfriend's. I unlocked the door for him to get in, and he pointed me in the direction of his brother's house, and we set off on our way. Things were pretty normal for a few minutes, and I was starting to feel like maybe I did the right thing. Then things started to get weird. First thing that made me uncomfortable was the way he acted every time there was a swear word in the music I was listening to. He was almost flinching every time 50 Cent said the F word, etc., and I picked up on it pretty quickly, so I changed the song thinking that he was just really against swearing or something. About a minute after I changed the song, there was no swearing in this one, but he reached up and slammed his hand on the radio's power button and turned it off. It wasn't crazy hard or anything, but it was definitely enough to get me to notice. I tried to make light of the situation and say, "Not your style?" This question was met with complete silence. At this point, I was ready for this guy to get out of my car, so I asked, "How much further do we have to go? I have to be somewhere soon, and I can't be late." He said we had about 4 minutes to go, which immediately sent up warning signals in my head, considering he had told me the same thing about 8 minutes ago. I decided that was enough. I didn't think he was dangerous or anything, but I figured our destination was further than he was letting on, and he was lying so that I would take him despite the distance. It was getting pretty late, and I wasn't trying to face my girlfriend's wrath, so I told him that this was as far as I could go and he would have to walk the rest of the way. His mood changed immediately, but instead of getting angry, which I completely expected, he became panicky and was practically begging me to take him the rest of the way. His overreaction set off pretty much every alarm I had in my head, so I told him to remove himself from my car before I had to remove him myself. It was then he pulled out his rather oversized wallet and offered to pay me, to take him the rest of the way. He tried to pull out a stack of $20 bills, but as he removed them from his wallet, something else fell out onto the seat next to him. It was only a split second before he grabbed it and shoved it back into his pocket, as if he didn't want me to see anything, but I got a good enough look at it for it to haunt me to this day. Along with his money, a small Ziploc bag full of what I'm confident were adult teeth fell out of his wallet. Front teeth, molars, you name it. Everyone I've told this story to has been skeptical of this part, but I'm confident that this is what I saw. I freaked out worse than I ever have and screamed at him to get out of my car. And he got out immediately and was looking at me with surprised eyes on the side of the road. I took off and called the police, who simply told me not to pick up hitchhikers ever again, and that they couldn't really do anything since the man didn't commit any crimes that we knew of anyway. I don't know where he was going or what he was doing, and I'm pretty sure I don't want to know. I do know, however, that he seemed to have all of his teeth still in his mouth. I don't know whose teeth those were or why he had them, but creepy teeth hitchhiker, let's never meet again. The story didn't happen to me, but happened to my grandma. When my grandma was in her early 20s, she and her friends decided to go on a road trip across America. They were having fun together, being young, fearless, and free. They were driving for miles, and at one point on the road, they found it was very lonely with no other cars around. Basically, they were driving in the middle of nowhere. A few miles after feeling the desolation and noticing that no one was around, they saw a man on the side of the road with a sign saying, "Going wherever you're going." At this time in my grandma's life, you could say she was a hippie. So I think it was her boyfriend who was driving and took notice of the man and pulled over. The hitchhiker looked at the car as if he was trying to see who was inside it. In the car was my grandma, her boyfriend at the time, and 3 girls in the back seat. The hitchhiker, after looking at the car, said, "Hell, my name is Chuck. Can I hitch a ride with you folks?" They let him in the car. After some time, Chuck started flirting and touching one of the girls' hair. Well, he did this one too many times, and at that point, they were done. That's when one of my grandma's friends said, "Get out of the car." At that point, they'd had enough of his strange behavior. They weren't too sure if he was on drugs or what, but the boyfriend stopped the car and Chuck got out, saying, "F you, bitch, I'm a lot of fun." My grandma claims he winked at her, which of course made her feel uncomfortable. They drove off. A few days later, they were at a diner and the waitress offered them newspapers. So they settled into their booth with their newspaper. And on the front cover was the same guy they gave a ride to. I forget what the heading said, but basically this guy was a convicted serial killer. He would gain followers, mainly women, and later would tell them to go kill people. He also conned many women out of their money. This man, Chuck, was Charles Manson. A few years back, I was driving to a party where I would meet up with friends. I left my house and was driving by myself at this time. They lived about 30 minutes away, and it was around 10:30 p.m., pitch black. So I'm driving down the road, and I see a man on the side of the road with a small white sack. Down the road, there's a white car with a door open. As I pull up, I roll down the window, and he says his car's broken down. His hair is greasy and long, and he looks a lot like the residents of that area. Farmers, mechanics, etc. So I pick him up as he wasn't too much bigger than myself. He was around 35. So I ask him where he's going, and he says to the town. Away we go. I started talking, and he's a bit weird, so eventually I stopped bothering to make conversation. Every so often, he shifts his position, and there's a clatter from the bag he has. He said he needs to arrange a ride when he gets in town and wonders if he can use my phone. I reluctantly give it to him, brand new iPhone. He calls someone up and starts saying he has some GPS for sale. His bag shifts, and I see he has radios in his bag. I soon realize what's happening. That broken down looking car he said he owned was a car he just stolen the radio from. And now he's trying to sell them while in my car, next to me on my phone. So I say, "Hey dude, when you're finished with your call, I need my phone back." Cool as a cucumber. I want to make him think that I'm really, really stupid and I'll just take him wherever. So we get about 10 minutes from where I'm going, and I know I have to get rid of him. So I'm like, "Hey brother, I need to make a call really quick so I can get to my friend's building." He reluctantly hands the phone back to me, and I make a quick fake call and chuck it in the door pocket where he can't get it. So I ask him again, since we're in town, where I can drop him off. He says, "Wherever you're going, you can drop me off there." I scan him really quickly to see if he has a knife or anything. So I slow down and stop when I'm satisfied he doesn't have one. I say, "Here you go, dude. I'm just going up around the corner." And he's like, "Nah, man, you can drop me off there." That's when I finally lost my cool and snap. I push the seatbelt button and yell, "This is where I'm dropping you, so get the F out." He looks at the pocket where my iPhone is, then back at my face. He finally says, "All right, dude, whatever." So I squeal my tires when I pull off, call him a POS, and immediately call the police. A couple of days later, I see a piece in the paper saying they caught him, and he was wanted for murder. Yeah, I don't pick up hitchhikers anymore. This happened in the 90s, so long before this recent surge of clowns. I don't quite remember how old I was, but I must have been between 8 and 10. Me and a friend were outside playing around the group of neighborhoods that laid scattered around where we used to live. We were allowed to play over a pretty huge area, and on this day, we had gone to the limits of that area, which was a bigger road with a bicycle path leading into the town near where we lived. The bicycle path and the road were separated by a row of small concrete blocks that we stood on as, for some reason, we decided to see if any cars would stop if we held out our thumbs and pretended to hitchhike. Of course, no one did stop to pick up two small boys. But as we were doing this, a man in his early 20s was walking along the bicycle path towards us, which is nothing strange as there's bus stops along the pathway, or just people walking into town, which was only about 2 kilometers away. When he was right next to us, though, he stopped and laughed and shook his head and said, "That's not how you hitchhike." And right after saying this, he put down his duffel bag he was carrying and took out a quite expensive-looking scary clown mask and a large knife. Me and my friend didn't really have time to react, as all this happened in just a few seconds. He proceeded to put the mask on and ran out on the road as a car came driving toward him. He stood on the road right in the path of the car so that the car had to slam its brakes and stop right in front of this crazy clown. The car had a driver and a passenger in the front seat, so the back seat was empty. As soon as the car had stopped for the clown, he put his empty hand on the hood and began running toward the back seat door on the passenger side while keeping his hand on the car. He opened the passenger door and jumped in, and before he closed the door, we just heard him yell "drive," which the car did with her new scary passenger. Me and my friend just stood there confused and not really knowing what it was we just saw. This all happened in maybe 30 seconds from the time he started talking to us, so it all happened very fast. No idea what happened to any of them after that. We told our parents, but they didn't believe us.